Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to Talking Buffalo. We are live here at Imperial Pizza, 1035 Abbott Road. Good food, good times. I am joined by WGR on-air talent and also host of the Locked On Sabres podcast. And I'll get to this story in a minute. Just found out recently, actually, we're cousins and we're related.
We are cousins.
Pretty wild, man. Joe DiBiase. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
What's up, Pat? We think second cousins, right?
Yeah,
we
second
figured out
cousins. I'll give the shorter version of what's kind of a sad story, but this was a pretty cool nugget of information to come from a sad story. Maybe 3-4 weeks ago or so, my sister's husband died. That's awful, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I was at the funeral, and a cousin of mine, Marcia, older than me, who I had not seen probably in 30, 35 years. I don't know. I was pretty much a kid last time I seen her.
Yep.
She came up to me. She knows. She talks to my mother all the time. And, you know, my mom talked about my podcast. She knows I have a podcast, this and that. So she starts naming off people that she knows. And she said somebody from WGR. And at first it was somebody who doesn't work at WGR. I think she might have said the name Chad or something.
I don't know any Chads at WGR.
I cannot remember. But so, you know, and I know everybody at WGR. Maybe not necessarily personally, but I certainly know of everybody who works at WGR. So that conversation went as it went. And then maybe a half hour or so later, she came out to me, she goes, the name is Joe.
Yeah.
I said, Joe DiBiase?
Yep.
And she goes, yeah. And she goes, you're cousins. I was like,
we're
what?
cousins.
I was like, we're cousins. I'm like, well, okay. So I talked to my mother after the funeral.
Yep.
And as it turns out, I have it written down so I don't forget this.
I was going to say, because you've told me maybe twice already, and I keep forgetting.
So do I. I keep forgetting. So I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Your great-grandfather is my grandmother's brother, which makes us my second cousin.
My great-grandfather is your grandmother's brother.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to forget that again.
You will.
I probably will forget it again.
Definitely going to
All we need to know is we're second cousins. We are related.
We are second cousins. We're related, which is funny because up until, 6 days ago, I mean, you've been on the show before, so I know you. Obviously, I follow you on the radio and stuff, but we never met in person.
No,
now it's been twice in a week because last Friday we were at Sal's birthday party, and that was the first time that I met you and your fiance, and my wife was there. So yeah, man, this is twice in a week now I'm together with Joe. Pretty cool stuff.
I'm glad you had me out here too. I lived right a couple streets over, and I love this place. So some good wings right before.
We did. What did we have?
So we had those wings.
We had Cajun medium. Which
were amazing. Thank you for that, by the way. Pat asked me beforehand, like, okay, what kind of wings do you like? I'm like, all right. I'm doing like a food thing too. Wings are actually not that bad. Like, I'm not doing keto, but wings are fine for like
Explain
keto.
That when you say you're doing a food thing. What do you mean?
Just like I'm trying to eat healthier. It's not quite a program, but it's like a timed eating thing, kind of, where just don't go off the rails. Don't eat like 5 slices of pizza. And wings, like,
it's tough to come here and not do that.
I know. Like, honestly, probably like air fried wings are like a good thing to do on this. Mm-hmm. These wings are fine though, as long as you're not doing like the sugariest sauce of all time. And you're like, okay, what kind of wings do you like? I'm like, Cajun. Yeah. Love Cajun, and Cajun's that's not that bad for you, right? Like it's just Cajun seasoning, maybe a little butter on there, right?
We had Cajun medium, which were kind of almost like a dry rub tonight. Which, God, those were really good. We had hot garlic parm.
Those I did not request, and like you were speaking my language. That's usually like a go-to order of mine anywhere.
It's funny because up until last week, I had never had those before in my life. I've had garlic parm, never hot garlic parm. And me, Joe Yurden, and Rachel Hotmeyer last week here.
Yep.
We had those. I was like, I got to try these again. Because you know how it is, Joe. We were talking about this over dinner. Sometimes you'll go to a place and you'll get some wings and you'll be like, oh my God, these are so good.
Yeah.
And then you think about them and then you'll come back to wherever that place may be and you get them again and they're like nowhere near as good.
Yeah, you need that consistency.
Right. And this place, nothing else is consistent.
I mean, I've been here a million times and I've had the wings a million times and they've always been just dynamite. Like one of those places where you don't have to tell them to make them extra crispy.
Yeah.
They just know.
And we had a third. I can't remember. I already forgot the third kind. What were the third kind?
The third kind were they sweet chili?
Chili pepper.
Chili pepper.
And they weren't bad. They were bad. They were all right.
Yeah.
Man, but
Little sticky. A little cleanup after the fact, but they were a nice change of pace, I would say, from the other two.
Yeah. Really good stuff, man. As always, man. Like I said, and I say it every week here, Imperial Pizza is one of the most consistent places of anywhere that you'll go, man. Good crowd tonight.
It was a great, best family dinner I've had in a long time.
Yeah. Now again, you have spent a lot of time. You live in South Buffalo, so you're familiar. Some of the guests that I have come through here have never been here before. They don't know the neighborhood whatsoever. They're like, "Is this Orchard Park? Is this Lackawanna?" I'm like, "No, this Imperial Pizza is the heart of South Buffalo." And I've said this many times too, and you know this. We were just talking about this being a bar you went to a lot. Imperial Pizza and Doc Sullivan's. Those are like the two mainstays of South Buffalo. Like when you think South Buffalo, you think Doc Sullivan's, and you think Imperial Pizza.
Those were Friday nights for me for a long time. Imperial, then Doc Sullivan's. I told you sometimes if you're really going wild that night, you'd end up at Molly's.
Shit show at Molly's.
Yeah,
3 o'clock in the morning.
You didn't
fire
feel
is packed. It
still is. Something about like you had a great time there. You didn't always feel great about yourself though when you look at your watch. It's 3:45 in the morning and I'm at Molly's. What is happening right now?
Yeah,
but it's a good spot too.
It's still the same, by the way. I've done that a couple times recently. Been there way later than
I'm sure.
You can always tell when Doc Sullivan's closes because it closes first. About 20 minutes afterwards, Molly's just getting mobbed here in South Buffalo.
I'm not surprised they're the same. I'm not surprised that it's not the same here, but even a couple of years ago, I moved out of South Buffalo, 2019, 2020, maybe right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the new like seating area over here, I don't know how new it is. Maybe it can't be more than a couple years old.
It's a handful of years old. I think they remodeled and expanded this place. I want to say, don't quote me on this for sure, but like maybe 2 years before COVID. It is literally night and day.
Yeah, and the whole place, like it used to be packed in here, and you would have like there'd be a couple tables, and you'd have the bar area, and it was it was roomy enough. But now it's like it's a scene here. It's a nice spot. It's tons of space.
We're in South Buffalo, so there's plenty of Pat Kane jerseys.
There's a lot of Patrick Kane jerseys.
I think there's like 5 different versions of a Pat Kane jersey.
Just in my view, there's 3. And there has to be 2 hanging around somewhere else. Yeah. They've got a good mix here, though. I like that they don't just go all Buffalo. Joe Montana. Why not?
Oh, there's
just open a Brady poster up and you're fine.
You want to talk about random? How about your Preston Brown Bills 52 jersey hanging up there?
Where is that? I did not.
Right near the cash register, right in the front of the counter in Preston Brown.
Okay,
Tim
fine.
Kennedy, South Buffalo guy right there.
That, of course. Yep, you got to have that. Preston Brown was a Pro Bowler, right? Don't quote me on that.
No,
maybe
he wasn't a Pro Bowler. He had like 1 million tackles. You know how people used to criticize Tremaine Edmonds for having all of his tackles like 7 yards down the line of scrimmage before this past year? He was really good this year. That was Preston Brown's Bills career. He'd rack up tackles like 6-7 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Not
That's probably right.
Preston Brown. But anyway, so we're taping this live. If people are watching here on the YouTube side or on Twitter or whatever, we're taping this on video side live. And podcast form will drop in the morning. We don't want to get too much into the weeds of a Sabres game going on right now, but we're taping this here live at Imperial, hell of a first period at least going on right now. 3-2 Sabres after 1. Crowd's pretty much into it. Well, at least the people that are still here watching the game, kind of a wild first period here while we're eating our wings, man.
A bad night to have the under. That was but for us sitting down, like watching this, like we watched the first period, eating. Perfect period. 5 goals. I mean, I guess you would have preferred Devin Levi didn't allow 2 in. He finally got beat. He'd allowed 4 goals in two games, but they were all kind of fluky, right? Like one goes off a post and off his arm and in. There's deflections. He got beat a couple times, but the 3 goals and then, man, Jeff Skinner's so amazing, right? Put 53 in the rafters. I mean, it's just, I love it. I love that he is got a little rat in him. Everybody needs a little of that on every team, and he's back to scoring goals. So you're not mad at him for being on the 4th line anymore. Yeah, Skinner's just a treat. I love it.
We'll talk some Sabres. We'll talk some Bills in just a couple minutes here. Let's start with WGR. Now, by the way, this is your second time on the podcast. Again, obviously, first time here with me in person. I'm going to put a link in the show notes on the podcast side. I had you back on in May of 2019, and
a lot's changed.
A lot has changed. That's what I'm like. Well, it's only been 3 years, a little less than 3 years, but a lot has changed, man. You were like you were kind of the new kid on the block, so to speak. Then you know what I mean. And you were starting to get your feet wet on the on-air side. You know, you were doing a lot of producing and stuff like that. And at that time, I think you were going to be doing 7 to 9 at night.
Yeah.
Locked On Sabres, the podcast, which you're doing now, that wasn't a thing then. It was soon after, though.
Yeah, only weeks, I think, after that. Yeah.
But now, like on the radio side here at WGR, obviously, you know, things have changed a lot over the past couple of years. You're pretty much on the air now from 6 in the morning to noon.
Yeah.
Every day. You're with Jeremy in the morning, and you're with Sal Capaccio at the Extra Point Show from 10 to 2. Let's start by, you know, Howard Simon, and I have not said it on the podcast. I'm going to say it now for people watching it, if they're listening. Next week, right here at Imperial Pizza Live, I'm going to have Howard Simon with me, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Howard is one of my favorite. See, we're here live. Anything can happen.
You'll know when they score.
The Sabres just scored a goal.
You'll know.
Who scored here?
Was it Tage again? Someone's holding up a Gergensen. It's Gergensen.
Zegmans Gergensen scores 4 goals here. I love it. This is the live vibe that we were talking about over dinner.
Yeah.
Where you know where anything. Where was I? My train of thought. Oh, Howard Simon, man.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorite people in the Buffalo sports media, man. A good guy who took the job serious, takes sports serious, but never took sports too serious. You know, he didn't treat it like it was the Ukraine war, you know, or civil unrest. It's sports, and he had a good time. And Howard was one of the first. You know, he would poke fun at himself just as much as anyone would ever poke fun at him. He was really good at self-deprecating humor. But one of my favorite things about Howard. But anyway, you got to work alongside with him for a while now. Talk about what Howard meant to you at WGR. And look, we're not eulogizing Howard. He's still alive and very, very well, by the way. But he has retired recently from WGR. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on working with Howard, on the kind of person he was on the air, off the air, maybe a couple things that you've learned from him during your time around him.
Yeah, and by the way, has he thrown out that first pitch yet for the Bisons?
I don't think they've played yet at home. I don't.
He's been loosening that arm up for 3 days. We need the weather to cooperate. I mean, you're right. Like, I only did really work with Howard I've been at the station now. The first week I'm at WGR is the week before Rex Ryan gets fired. So it's always the way I remember it. So that's what? That's 7 years now?
Yeah.
7 or 8 years. It's been a long time. And a lot of that was,
in 2016, I believe.
Yeah. A lot of that's part-time work, doing some updates. And then, of course, all the years producing. So I only really worked with Howard for a year doing that. And when he went down to that limited schedule, it became 3 days a week. But honestly, like, even just listening to Howard since I was 6 years old, like, I've been listening to the station since I was a little kid.
Sure.
And you pick up things along the way about how he leads a show. And then once you get to work with him, you mentioned like how seriously he takes the job. He takes the job seriously, right? But he doesn't take the topic as seriously as, like you said, like it's not world hunger or anything. And he even said that on his last day that like he wasn't, a firefighter. He wasn't, a doctor. It was an emotional show. Sure. Especially at the end, like that final segment. If you want to tear up, listen to that final segment back. Howard, I mean, his habits, I mean, he would be that final show. I'll tell you. So I'm not quite a late riser. I'm definitely a night owl. So morning was an adjustment. Sure. And even still, I'll show up, somewhere between, I like to try to get there around 5:30. It usually ends up being more like 5:45, 5:50. Do a lot of my work the morning before. Howard, his final show, I showed up at probably 3:50. No, that's not right. 4:50. 4:50, over an hour before the show. I prepared a bunch of opens and stuff and like make sure, the guests are squared away. Just want to triple check everything. I got there. This is his final show. Yeah. He's not even leading the show really. Like we kind of told him like, we'll handle it. You're good. You just enjoy the ride. And he's still there. He's there when I got there. It's over an hour before the show starts. He's there. And like, he would always be the first one in. That's a cliche, right? Like you hear a lot. First one in, last one out. Howard really was that. And man, if you worked with him, that giant yellow legal pad. He had notes throughout that thing.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
So his preparation and just seeing how he treated the job, I mean, that's really what you learn and you take away from Howard. And honestly, this is something I'm still trying to get better at. I'm young still. I'm trying to get better as a host. The art of the rant. Yeah. It's not every day you do that, but Howard and Bulldog, especially Jeremy and Mike, of course, are great at it too. But something about when Howard and Bulldog would kick it into sixth gear when they're really mad about something. I mean, that is, I think the guys sometimes would tell you they're embarrassed by those moments. You don't want them to happen every day, because then then you're one of the guys that are on ESPN every morning. But like
that's true.
It is great radio. It's great radio. And like that's a small thing too that I took away. But there's a lot. I mean, even though it was only a year, there was a lot that I learned just working with Howard and just watching how he treated the job.
I'll tell you, man, that last segment, and I know it's still available. Like if you go to the WGR website, I'm sure it's still there. Yeah, that got me, man. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've always liked, I don't know him well. In fact, I just met him for the first time in person last year. I'm talking about Jeremy White. No, I'm talking about Jeremy White.
Yeah.
I thought what he said, the way he put a rap on, his final words on the air, at least for Howard, it moved me, man. I thought it was really cool. If you watch it on the video site, because there was a video of it as well. Sal comes in to the room, doesn't even say anything, but he told me, I had to be there for that moment right there.
Yeah.
When Jeremy was talking and then Howard signed off, man, it was just that was really good radio, man.
You weren't able to see it because obviously it's an audio medium, and then I think Brayton Wilson was the one that was recording the video from the corner of the studio in the control room. I'm behind the board, and there were a dozen or more people, maybe 20 people behind me, like sales staff and staffers from BEN down the hall, or even Star. I think Rob Lucas maybe was in the room. Like there was just everyone in the building was like, I got to see this. I got to see it up close and personal. And there were tears in that room. Like I was trying not to tear up. I'm trying, like, I'm on the board there. It's going to make sure everything's under control and we're good timing wise. Like we're whatever final segment. I just remember like there's 20 people behind me and like 18 of them have to be like tearing up right now. It was emotional. It was because
it was genuine.
It was exactly.
Howard's a genuine guy. It's one thing to be in the market for as many years as he has. What's another thing to be the type of person that he's been and be so universally liked. I was joking with you over some wings before we started taping this, and I'm like, my name's Patrick Moran, and you're Joe DiBiase, and there's Sal Capaccio, and then Jeremy White. Howard is Howard. There's no Howard Simon. It's Howard. It's like Beyonce or Madonna. Like
he's a first name basis.
He's reached that first name basis here in Buffalo. People just know him as Howard, not even so much Howard Simon. And I just think that's a really endearing trait for him to have. Talk about working with Sal now, because now you guys are doing the Extra Point show every day from 10 to noon. How has that been?
I like Sal, and I have built an incredible chemistry, I think.
Yeah.
He was at the start hosting with him. I knew Sal forever. I would talk to him every day at work, like he would come on, show up with the Bulldog, or we'd do hits if I was on the nightcap. I knew Sal forever, but I had not really ever hosted a show with him. And it wasn't quite an adjustment, but actually, unless you go back to like college radio days, the first show I ever hosted college radio was with Nick Mendola.
At Buff State, right?
At Buff State. Nick used to work at WGR, and like I got spoiled with that. But really, after college, I never really co-hosted with anybody. Sports Talk Saturday, when you're in for that show, you're usually doing it solo. The Nightcap was a solo show. I'd have a producer there, and that's kind of the same. But Sal was really the first professional radio show where all right, we're co-hosts. Like, this is our show. What do we want to make of it? And I would say as time went on, it was such a smooth transition. I didn't know how it was going to be at the beginning because, we do have different vantage points on a lot of things.
Sure.
Sal has a very optimistic view on a lot of things sports related. Not all the time. Like he definitely stays objective and balanced.
Sure.
And I don't want to say I usually come from a cynical end of things, but that usually will be the first place I look is, okay, why is this criticism really? Like GR at its core sometimes can be a complaint department. And sometimes that can be me naturally, instinctually. And I think maybe that's a good flow between me and Sal. And I think that became clear to me very quickly. Like within weeks, it was, this show's going to be a breeze to do. Like we don't even have to think about, like, we'll just get onto a topic and go for an hour about it. And again, because Sal was a reporter and I was a producer and he had more host experience than I did, but I didn't know how that was going to go. And I would say after a couple years, it is a breeze to do the show with Sal. Not to say we don't prepare or anything, but I could do the show with Sal in my sleep, no doubt.
I totally understand what you're saying. Like, I do this podcast with a lot of people. Joe Yurden, I do it with every week. And it's like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know kind of where he's going to go with a lot of things. He knows where I'm going to go with a lot of things. So and when you have that chemistry with somebody, it's a lot easier to prepare.
I think Sal, too, the other thing, to his credit, he is kind of the point guard of the show. Like, he is very good at getting his own opinions in there, but he does really steer the ship. Like, he goes topic to topic. Like, what are we going to talk about in this segment? Like, he's the point guard, and he allows me to keep with the basketball reference. He allows me to kind of just hang out on the 3-point line and just shoot. And I appreciate that from him. And, I think that was another thing. Like, I didn't really know what our roles would be going in terms of that. And that's a very good, like, we just pick up on it with each other. He's gonna go topic to topic. He'll toss it to me, and then I'll toss it back to him, and then we're off and running.
What is the process like, and what was the adjustment like getting used to working as early now as you are? Like you said, for the most part now, you're on the air daily right now from 6 a.m. all the way through noon. That's, first of all, 6 hours on the air is a lot, period. I don't care how many commercials or other segments or guests that you have. That's still a lot of work every day. But just getting your body physically, mentally used to getting up and having to do 6 hours of radio 5 days a week, man. That pretty much is a toll, I would assume, anyway, because I'm not doing that shit. I'm doing a podcast at night because you're a night guy. You said that,
oh, yeah.
Man. What's that adjustment been like?
I was the guy that, as we mentioned earlier, when I was going to Imperial on Friday nights and then Doc Sullivan's and then Molly's, like, why was I able to do that? Because I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning every night. If it wasn't going out, which I was not going out more than once or twice a week, I was up playing video games till 2 o'clock in the morning, or I was watching whatever sport game started at 10 o'clock. I'd be watching the Clippers or whatever. So I was a night owl for sure. And I was able to do that because working Chopin the Bulldog, it's a shift where you go in at like 1 or 2 o'clock and you get out at like 9. So you can sleep in till 10.
Sure.
And it's not hard. So starting the process of getting up for a show that starts at 6, you really want to get up between 4:30 and 5. That was the biggest adjustment. Honestly, the sleep schedule. Preparation, I could do that the night before as I'm watching games and just seeing what's going on Twitter throughout the day. I'll listen to Chopin Bulldog and podcast the day before, just to kind of pick up on what's happening. But the two biggest differences, I would say, are absolutely the sleep schedule. But I will say that I did transition easier than I thought. Like, I can go to bed now at 8:30. I don't do that every night. I usually shoot for it, and it usually ends up being more like 10. But I can go to bed at 8:30. That's, by the way.
Did it take you a while to get used to that? Because I struggle. If I go to bed earlier than I'm used to, I can't sleep well. Like, I wake up maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours later, and I'm like, my body just don't feel right. Like,
no,
it took you a while?
It did. I would say the getting up was always easier than going to sleep. The getting up, I compared it for a while to, like, I was getting up. My body thought I was getting up to go on vacation. Because the only time my entire life I was up at 4:30 in the morning, I was about to get on a plane to go to Florida or to go to California or something.
True, yeah.
So the going to sleep, though, that was an adjustment because your body clock for 5 years is I'm going to bed at between midnight and 2 a.m. Now suddenly I'm trying to go between, usually again, like 9 and 10 is usually what I ended up going to bed at. And that was definitely an adjustment. But again, now, like, if the Sabres are playing, I'll go to bed at 9:30 and fall asleep at 10. If there's a game on, I'll stay up till 10. And I'm able to get right to sleep. So the sleep schedule's worked out. And then the one other thing that is a transition was doing the nightcap before. And, like, I would be sitting there. I would listen to the morning show a little bit in the morning, maybe listen to a podcast along the way throughout the day. And then I'd be sitting there behind the board as Chopin Bulldog did their show for 4 hours. So honestly, I didn't have to write one thing down the whole day. And really, as the nightcap would begin at 7 o'clock, I would have 12 hours of preparation already in my brain.
Sure.
Because I've been listening to it all day.
Yeah.
So the difference there would be I'm no longer, I'm not 12 hours prepared. I'm now starting, that day of conversation. And it will a lot of times be carryover from the day before. But that's another adjustment that, I would say I've gotten used to. But it is different for sure. Just just having to be like, you're the first voice on the air or in the world really every day when you're talking about sports.
I'm sure you have a lot of fun at times with some of these saucy complainers, the ones who like to go nuts and get their voice on the radio. Does it ever get a point though where it gets frustrating? Like you want to say something, you want to get something out a certain way, and no matter how well you articulate it, people are just going to call and have whatever their takes are going to be, no matter how crazy, deranged some of them might even be.
Yeah.
I would probably, I don't know, maybe your demeanor probably is better than mine. I don't know, man. My patience level would probably be less than what I would assume yours and sales and everyone else's. How do you deal with some of these, like the sauciest of callers, the ones who are just like, come on.
I think that's an interesting question.
Makes for good radio, though.
It makes for good radio. And I was exactly the same way before I really was on the air a lot. Yeah. Like you, if I heard a caller say some of the things that you've heard, we had someone call in a couple weeks ago that said Ed Oliver should play middle linebacker. It's, by the way, like the third time someone's tried to make a different player a middle. Someone tried to make Josh Allen a middle linebacker a month ago, and then Ed Oliver, just Rousseau, just okay. Let's stop this. But if I was a listener, and I heard that, yeah, I would be like, man, are you kidding me? Like I'd be frustrated as heck. Maybe I'm trying to figure out what the difference is, because when I'm on the air and I'm hosting, I love it. Yeah. I love it. Maybe it's just because I like to spar and go back and forth a little bit. But now that I'm thinking about it, one difference might be when you're on the air or when you're driving around your car listening to it, they can't hear you. I can tell the guy from the car, you're an idiot. And you're not at Oliver. Here's a million reasons why he can't be a middle linebacker. Right. But he can't hear me. The difference when I'm on the air and that guy calls in, why maybe I like it, is, he can hear me. And I'll go back and forth with him. I don't want to, you never want to jump down the guy's throat and dissuade people from calling in, because the callers are the show a lot. So I don't want to dissuade them, but I do like the back and forth. And when those guys call, I'm into it.
That's a good take. I never thought of it that way. You get to say what you want and they can hear it. If I'm listening on my radio, I can start yelling and screaming and they ain't hearing me, man. Quick, funny little story. And this is when I was younger, teenager. We used to call WGR, me and my friend Anthony. I think I might have told this once on the podcast. We used to intentionally troll the coach, Chuck Dickerson. He would be on the air for WGR. I'll never forget it, man. We would talk. I remember my friend Anthony said the Bills need to trade Reed right now while he still has some trade value. And again, we didn't even believe that take. It was solely because we knew the coach.
Got to fire him up.
You know how it is when you know a kid and you're like, I could get him riled up real easy. It's kind of like that with the coach back in the day on WGR.
He seems like someone that would have been a little easy to rile up.
He'd get fired up.
Just a guess.
We would troll him up. We would troll him on purpose just to watch the coach explode on the air. So we're talking about what you do on the radio and your process with that. And again, now you also are the host of Locked On Sabres, which is a podcast, and it's not like you do it once a week. This is like almost every weekday as well.
Yep.
How the hell, when do you fit that shit in?
It's easier now that I'm working in the mornings. When you get out at 12 o'clock, you got the rest of the day really to fit it in. It's tougher when, like, sometimes you want to do like a game preview episode and like you want to get that in as early as possible. You don't want to record that at 4 o'clock because the game starts in a couple hours. But otherwise, it's been easier to do the podcast after the schedule change, just to have the rest of the day. So it's really not that bad. I thought I would be someone that would want to fit a nap in all the time, and I've really gotten the habit of not needing it. So because I come home and I'll walk the dog, or I'll take him to the dog park or something. If I have a couple errands to run, like I usually will it'll be one of the first couple things I do after the show. I like to do at least one thing, even if it's just lunch, just something to space it out and not just go 6 hours of hosting, boom, home, right to another show. So it's not as bad as you might think. And honestly, it's every day, it's every weekday, but it's a 20 to 30 minute podcast. So it's hard in the summers, I guess, to create content, and it goes down to 3 days a week in the summer. Sure. But I will say it's not as big a challenge as you might think, and it's why I've continued to do it. I mean, my schedule is definitely hectic, and I'm on the air a lot, and you can very easily get run down just being on the air. 6 hours on the air is a lot different than 6 hours behind the board. But I do think because it's only 20 to 30 minutes, and the team's made it easy this year to do it too with talking. So yeah, it's not as bad as you might think.
Locked On, the not just the podcast, that the whole network for Locked On has really grown, man. And I know videos had a lot to do with it. I've talked to Joe Marino. Joe's on with you every week on WGR. Joe Marino, of course, I'm talking about, host of Locked On Bills.
Locked On it. There were no. But last time we talked, because I got contacted a couple weeks after the podcast we did in 2019. There were no Locked On NHL shows. They didn't even exist.
Wow.
And they've added 32 new shows on that channel. They've added like 50 other shows, I feel like, between college sports and like they started, experience or getting into like solo shows. So
really,
the network is like light years beyond where it was when we talked.
And that network has really grown their presence on the video side on YouTube.
Yes.
I've had some conversations with Joe about that. He says, it's really something you got to record it anyway. So it's not really that much extra work to get it up on the internet for them. And he says his show's grown a lot just by being discovered, having the show up on the video side on YouTube every day.
Yeah. The YouTube side, I actually have found it easier to do like editing or whatnot. It maybe because you're looking at yourself on the computer screen and you're not live, but maybe it feels more live. I do it in one shot every time. And that did not used to be the case. I'd have to edit shows and like, I got to cut this out, or I stumbled here and then I stopped. Like, so for some reason, because it's video, I do it in one shot all the time. So you're like, Joe's right. Like, if you're going to do it anyway, what's the difference? Gain your audience on YouTube.
Yeah.
There is a little extra revenue that comes with that too.
Sure.
Your audience is not quite the same. I'm sure you know too. It's not quite the same as your audio audience.
Right.
But the YouTube part of it has helped a lot. And they do a good job of keeping you motivated and, just continuing to grow around you, keeping people connected, on different shows. They'll help arrange like, hey, the Sabres made a trade with the Wild for Jordan Greenway. And they'll throw both you and the Wild host in a DM chat.
Right.
Like, if you guys if you got time to get together, like any chance you want to do a crossover show, like where you're both on, like they're very good about that. They help you a lot if you have extra legwork, like editing or like in terms of production equipment and such. So, and it does help for sure that they have a content partnership agreement with Odyssey. So the two companies I work for being, in cahoots together, I should say, that's made it a lot easier for me as well.
All right. Well, you mentioned editing. This show is live from Imperial, so there's going to be no editing going on. We are going to take a quick, literally 5-second break, and we're going to be right back. All right, we are back here live from Imperial Pizza in South Buffalo. I'm with Joe DiBiase. We banged out some wings, talked about your job, your career. Let's spend a couple of minutes at least talking about the Buffalo Bills here. So the draft's in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
You're on the air every day. You're talking about it. You're fielding phone calls from fans. Where's your head at right now with this draft? Because I feel like there's so many positions we discussed. There's one glaring, obvious hole that they have, and that's obviously middle linebacker.
Yep.
Does that mean automatically, though, that they're going to address it early? Like, where's your head at right now when it comes to this draft?
It could. For me, I'm not a big fan of them going middle linebacker. It's not too easy, but I'm all on the receiver train. If you listen to the morning show, me and Jeremy are both on it. I want the wide receiver in the first round. They have yet to do it really with this regime. Diggs, withstanding, they did trade a first for him.
Sure.
But I think a lot of the struggles this team had last year was when they couldn't get receivers that would get open. It was just Diggs. Gabe Davis with the ankle injury might have hampered him a little bit, but I think this team needs more guys that get open. When they were at their best, they had 4 receivers that were consistent. In Allen's first breakout year, 2020, John Brown was the 3rd best receiver on the roster, maybe 4th. It went Diggs. You had Diggs, you had Beasley, you had you had Brown, and you had Davis. And then the next year, Brown out, Sanders in. You still had those 4. You had 4 guys you could trust that would get open on a consistent basis. And last year, you had 2. I don't need you to get back to 4. Can I get to 3 at least? And I think they've already made some moves that help that. I like Trent Sherfield, and I like Hardy. But let's be real. They're not guys that have done a lot in the league. I like their profiles, and I think there's going to be more there for them. but I can't trust that. I would want to take another shot at a receiver. A lot of guys are in that range. Zay Flowers is in that late first round range from Boston College, and when I hear Tyler Lockett clone, I'm in on that.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison, they've met with, the USC receiver. He, smaller in stature too, but for me, separation is the number one thing you look for. Quentin Johnston's the one where, like, if they do it, I'm still going to love it. It's a receiver, but he's more contested catch guy, bigger body. He sounds like a Gabe Davis clone.
I was going to say, he's a little bit bigger, faster Gabe Davis type player.
So I'm not going to be mad if they do that by any means. I won't be that picky, but I want to see them go receiver. This is the other thing. Receiver, every year we could have this debate. There will always be a need on defense. Like, at some point, if you're going to eventually do it, you're going to have to pass on that big, large need. This year, it's middle linebacker. But next year, Ed Oliver's a free agent. Next year, it'll be defensive tackle. And then the year after that, Von Miller's 35 years old. Now I need another defensive end. And then the year after that, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are gone. Now I need a safety. Then Tre'Davious White's 33. Now I need I just think, I think every year there will be that big need on defense. And I just don't want this team every year just to be like automatically, I have this big need on defense. That's what they're going to draft in the first round.
It's like they're putting Band-Aids on a unit. I had Tyler Dunn on a couple weeks ago, and he was kind of saying the same thing that you are right now as
He's
well.
All in on receiver.
All in on just offense and weaponry, period. Obviously, wide receiver. It's kind of, let me ask you your opinion, because I think this matters when you look at the Buffalo Bills on Gabe Davis. You mentioned an ankle. He was hampered by that last year. And also, to his credit, Cole Beasley, who at times has been very outspoken against the organization, but he's very high on Gabe Davis. And if you follow him on Twitter or seen him come across on Twitter, he's been defending him a lot lately, talking about, he's going to work. Nobody works his ass off harder than he does. He's going to work his ass off. And he also talked about maybe a reason why his catch percentage is lower than a lot of others when you go per target is because of his route tree. They throw deep to him a lot. And by the way, again, we are watching this live, and I think the Detroit Red Wings just scored twice.
So
it went from 4-2 to 4-4. That's not good. But anyway, back to Gabe Davis.
My under's dead, by the way, already. The under is dead.
It's okay. The under is officially dead. I think it's been dead. But yeah, man, we're talking about Gabe Davis and Cole Beasley, like I said.
Yeah.
The routes that they have Gabe run, he throws the ball to him deep a lot. The completion percentage is going to be lower. Where do you stand right now with Gabe Davis, who is going into a contract there? And also, two-parter here for you, because I think this affects, too, what they might do in the draft. Khalil Shakir, what are your thoughts on him going into year two?
Starting with Davis, I was super bullish on him last year. Super bullish. And, I was drafting him in fantasy. I was thinking 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Like, the guy was one of the most efficient receivers in football for 2 years. And he just wasn't playing a lot. And every time he touched the field, big plays. I wanted to see an expanded role for him. And he was fine. But, I guess we'll never know how much the injury really hampered him. A high ankle sprain, or maybe it wasn't a high ankle sprain, but it was an ankle injury. For a guy that he's not a burner. He's a downfield threat. He wins down the field. He's got those long strides. He's a good contested catch guy, not a great guy. His numbers stunk last year, I know. But for his career, he's still pretty good. I just think the ankle injury could have been bothering him. And, more focus on him than, if you drafted a guy in the first round, or maybe Hardy and Sherfield could help this out, you could focus on him. Because all you have to do is take Diggs and double cover Diggs, put a top corner on Davis or bracket coverage him, and you could take him away pretty easily. So I think the whole offense could be helped by another receiver, including Davis. I'm not at a point, though, even thinking there's more there from him, where I'm liking the idea of paying him. I think they could, though. I really wonder if they're going to do it and do it before the season. They're going to pay him. But I don't like the idea of it. It would probably be between 10 and 15 million a year. That's what guys like Alan Lazard got 11. I know Jacoby Myers 11. Michael Gallup's a good comp for Davis. He got, I think, 12. That's a good range for him.
It is.
Something about the Knox contract, and if they were to pay Davis, it would say something, right? It would say these guys are they're Bills, and they've been a part of our system, and they're good workers. But on some level, it would be, we're going to settle for our guys even when they're only pretty good. They're both pretty good players. Neither of them are great. Neither of them are like top tier at their position. And that would be two guys on offense where you'd say, yeah, they're pretty good. All right, we'll pay them. Like, I think I'd want to try to replace guys like that, try to get better from guys like that. So I'm not on board with paying Davis. I'm open to being wrong and open to having them to pay more if he balls out this year. And then on Shakir, I like the prospect of Shakir. It's crazy to me, though, some of the hype he gets. I mean, I know he's a good prospect. I know he's got some good traits. But come on, he was a 5th-round pick that had 10 catches.
Acting like he's a first-rounder. I get that.
I'm not telling you to kick him off the team. I'm not saying he should be cut. I think he deserves a jersey on game days. And you know what? Put him on offense here and there. See what he's got. Maybe special teams.
You don't want to rely on him. You're not ready to go into year 2 relying on him. Say, listen, if a good receiver comes here early in the draft, we're not going to take him because I feel really, really good about Khalil Shakir going into year 2.
And right now, isn't he their on paper starting slot receiver?
Probably him or Hardy. Yeah.
I don't mind him being in competition for that with another rookie, but I would feel on edge if a guy that had 10 catches in his first year as a 5th-round pick was, he's going to take a giant step as our number 3. Yeah, maybe he might. He has the athletic traits to do it, but you're right. Like Super Bowl or bust type season, I would not want to bank on that guy being my number 3 receiver. I'd feel much more comfortable if you were my number 5.
A good friend of mine, to your point about taking a wide receiver early, had a take, and I couldn't agree with this more. He said the Buffalo Bills right now, as things stand, are a Stephon Diggs high ankle sprain away from having one of the wackest wide receiving units in the whole NFL.
If he got one, yes. Let's say the season started tomorrow and he got an ankle injury. Where are you at? You're at Davis and Hardy on the outside, and then Shakir and Sherfield in the slot. You're New England at that point. New England with their trash receiving core.
With a better quarterback, sure, yeah.
You do have a lot better quarterback, so they will look better than the New England guys will. But I don't want to be Green Bay. Green Bay, I can't imagine what I would have been like in Green Bay the last 10 years. This is me. I sound like this. See how desperate I sound for them to draft a receiver? This is after 2 years. No, wait, 1 year. 1 year, really, they need to draft a receiver in the first round. Green Bay went 10 years with Devontae Adams as their number 1, and they never spent a top 3-round pick on a receiver.
Right.
And I guarantee you, if I were in Green Bay the last 10 years, every year I'd have been doing the same exact thing. Just don't be Green Bay. Just don't do that.
Let me pivot to another position, but still a weapon for the offense. Let's just say, for the sake of discussion, because this realistically could happen, let's say Jackson Smith, Najigba, and Addison, and Johnson, and even Flowers. Let's say somebody gets them at 22, 23. Those 4 receivers are gone, and you don't have a first-round grade on anyone else.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with this team is currently destructive, which I suppose comes down to what you think of Quentin Morris? But let's say Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, and Darnell Washington from Georgia. I'm a big fan of him. One of those 3 guys, even though the Bills have Dawson Knox and they gave him a big contract, where would you be at if the Bills said, you know what, I really like this tight end, we're gonna have 2 tight end sets allowed, we're gonna switch some shit up, and they took a tight end? Or do you think that's a bad allocation of resources with your first round pick?
It's not, somewhere in the middle. It's not my least favorite idea. It's definitely not my favorite idea, though. I think this team got consumed last year with, instead of investing in receiver, we'll invest in pass catchers. Mm-hmm. And like Quentin Morris last year played more snaps at wide receiver than he did tight end for this team.
Yeah.
And Nyheim Hines played more snaps at wide receiver than he did running back. How'd that go?
Not great.
They're not receivers. So for me, if it were to replace a receiver, it's not my favorite idea whatsoever. If they just did it because they had a first-round grade on the guy and there were no first-round receivers that they had, and they did want to do it, it just didn't fall right for them, and they do plan on doing it in the future, then I'm okay with it. As long as this team is just not opposed to investing heavily behind Diggs at receiver. But I just wouldn't want it to replace it. And I would say expectations shouldn't be that high if they were to do that. Okay. Washington or whoever, like the nature of the tight end position is it takes years for those guys to develop 99% of the time. I looked this up recently that in the last decade, there are only 2 rookie tight ends that have had more than 700 receiving yards. 2.
Really?
In 10 years. It was Kyle Pitts at 1,000, and Evan Ingram had like 715 for the Giants. And that's it. Everybody else, it takes a couple of years. Travis Kelce, it took a couple of years. Gronk actually might predate that. Gronk might have been one of the last guys that like balled out as a rookie. But for the most part, you just can't expect big expectations right away. So I'm not saying the guy wouldn't contribute, and maybe he'd be like the red zone offense struggled last year. He doesn't have to get 700 receiving yards. They could draft Darnell Washington. He has 400 receiving yards, but he has 8 touchdowns by the red zone, and that's worth it. I would want to manage expectations for how big a role that player would play in their offense.
I think of Darnell Washington, and I just think great fit because the way the Bills, like Bobby Hart was consistently like that 6 offensive line.
He played more snaps at tight end. Than he did line.
Tight end eligible. Right.
Yeah.
Now you got Darnell Washington. He could be that 6 offensive lineman, basically. He's a tight end. He can get open, he can catch the ball, and he can produce in the red zone. So I look at that as a fit. If that comes down to Ken Dorsey making it work, should that come down? And again, I still would prefer a wide receiver, but I'm operating under the scenario that we talked about where those first 4, they're all gone.
I will say it does on the offense. It's not my favorite because that would be receiver. It's honestly not my second favorite idea on offense either. It's definitely third though.
Mm-hmm.
Second favorite for me, I'm falling for the right tackle idea a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't need to rush Spencer Brown off the team, but I saw a mock draft today from Pro Football Focus, and actually there was another one from CBS yesterday that both had the Bills drafting DeJuan Jones, the monster Godzilla right tackle from Ohio State, who's like 6'8", 370.
Yeah.
Just a mammoth. And he's going to be a first-round pick, probably. Maybe he goes early second round. My reaction to like right tackle would be, okay, that's a key position. That ranks for me above tight end. Like things you want to have figured out. Like quarterback, of course, is number 1. For me, number 1 receiver is number 2. Left tackle, and then maybe center should be above right tackle. But right tackle is like right after that. Like I want to have Allen protected as well as possible. And they already made one investment in the O-line and Connor McGovern to upgrade that whole unit. Brown was so bad last year, and I'm willing to give him some pass. Brandon Beane talked about this end of season that like he got an injury in training camp, and maybe he didn't have a full off season, and maybe he just wasn't right the whole year. I'm open to that being right, but what happens if that's not right? And I got a hole at right tackle the whole year, and the guy's getting beat over and over. Allen can escape pressure, and he's someone that can make up for that as well as anybody. But I watched the Eagles last year for a whole season. I mean, they allowed Jalen Hurts to do whatever he wanted. Yeah. And Hurts, I think he is a great quarterback, but he's not Allen or Mahomes. Why do you have Allen or Mahomes numbers? The guy had 20 seconds to do whatever he wanted back there. He's the best O-line in football. And little jealous of a team that can protect their quarterback and allow him to do whatever he wanted. And that is another fix to not doing receiver. If you're not going to draft a receiver, I need one of two things. I need the guys that are going to get open quicker, or I need to give Allen more time in the pocket. And that would satisfy the need, I think, if they got a right tackle and he was an upgrade.
And you got to look at the market with tackles, what they make. So to be able to get a guy in the first round and keep one for 5 years would be big.
Yeah, Orlando Brown got like $20 million a year.
Yeah, crazy, man. And I heard Joe Marino on Locked On Bills talking about Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse, who most have been projected as a second-round guy. He said he would be happy if the Bills took him in the first. He thinks he might play his way into the first. You mentioned Brandon Beane talking about Spencer Brown. And look, off-season is lying season for GMs. We all know that. I'm afraid, though, that he might be authentic when he feels really confident in Spencer Brown. I would be on board with taking an offensive tackle for sure. And let me ask you this, too. How much pressure do you think is on Brandon Beane right now with this draft? Because I was on a show last week, and Joe Goodberry from he has a Bengals podcast. Really good dude.
Yep.
He was running off
Niagara
the difference.
Falls guy, right?
Yeah, Niagara Falls guy. Yeah, he was running off second or day 2 picks, not first round guys. We've been talking now for 20 minutes about exclusively the first round.
Yeah.
He ran off over the last 4 or 5 years, day 2 picks for the Bengals and how good those guys have been. Yeah. And you look at the Bills, and they've hit on some draft picks in the first round. And you look at most of their day 2 picks during the Brandon Beane era, and it's not great with Singletary and Moss. And, Dawson Knox has been a pretty good tight end, but A.J. Epinesa, Boogie Basham, the
Terrell Bernard didn't really even play last year.
Yeah, Terrell Bernard and Joe Goodberry was talking about. This is why he thinks the Bengals have more talent than the Bills right now, because the Bills have not done a great job of adding top-notch talent on day 2. Do you feel like Brandon Beane's got to start drafting better? I don't think his job's in jeopardy. That's not what I'm suggesting, but there's pressure on him. He's got to start hitting on these picks with more consistency.
He may be one of his saving graces. He's made up for it a little bit with hitting on some day 3 picks.
Sure.
Matt Milano headlines that group, right? Like Milano, you redraft that draft, he's a first. Oh, you're right. No, that's McDermott. That's McDermott.
Right, like still like Dane Jackson. Dane Jackson was a really good 7th round pick. They have
Christian Benford looks like a decent player.
Like a good one.
No, but you're right. Like in large part, the day 2 picks, they've been for the most part misses.
Yeah.
Or at least even
lukewarm,
the guys lukewarm. Yeah. So pressure. Maybe not pressure, but if they wanna make sure they're above teams like Cincinnati and Kansas City or right there, then especially now when Allen has this contract, it's more important because you're not able to supplement with free agents as much as you used to be able to. When they missed on, and this wasn't Bean either, this was McDermott, Whaley. When they missed on Zay Jones, it was okay because they had money to go pay John Brown and Cole Beasley.
Right,
it was fine. When they missed on, who's another second day guy that they kind of missed on. When they missed on Boogie Basham, that was okay. They had money to go pay Von Miller. Yeah. Like they had money to do things. That's probably not going to be the case anymore. I say probably because Bean just continues to figure out ways to pay, even with that contract, with Allen's contract. It will be harder though, so it's more imperative I think that he hits on these picks even than before. Also, a way to do that, just stop drafting running backs in day 2, man. Just stop drafting running backs.
I don't think you're going to see that this year. I know a lot of people. Bijan Robinson's a popular name. I don't spend a second of my life thinking about him, not because I don't want him on the Bills, because he's not going to be there. He's not going to be there at 27. So save your energy, folks.
But I would like to have confidence in Bean that like this. I want a receiver in round 1, right? I do want to see them invest in middle linebacker. I'm not saying I don't. I just prefer receiver over it. I'd prefer to say receiver in round 1, middle linebacker in round 2. I guess the question is, one, is there a player that fits in that range of the draft? And how much confidence do you have in Brandon Beane's ability in the 2nd or 3rd round? He's going to draft the middle linebacker. The guy can be plug and play. I'm still not thinking that he can't do that. He does have misses, but I would still have enough confidence in this GM that if he drafted a middle linebacker on day 2 or a defensive tackle or a right tackle, that those guys would be in competition for snaps right away.
That's very fair. My final take with the Bills draft is this. I'm with you with the first pick, man. Go get yourself a receiver, an offensive tackle, even a tight end, and I can live with any of those, and I'll be fine. I brought up this point last week, too. So the Bills have a comp pick. They're going to get a comp pick, a 3rd-round pick for losing Edmonds next year. I think that matters right now, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Let's say the Bills are picking at 59, and let's say Jack Campbell or Sanders is there maybe around 38 to 42.
Yeah.
The Bills can package that 2nd rounder 59 and give up a 3rd rounder next year, and they'll still have one because of the comp pick that they got, and they can move up earlier in that mid to early-ish 2nd round, and they can still go get their middle linebacker.
The other idea I do like for this is, especially since I still can't figure out where those linebackers are going to go, because a lot of people have them mocked in like the early 20s, and then others have them in the 2nd round.
All over the place, yeah.
None go in the 1st.
Yeah.
The idea I like, if there's a run, especially if there's a run on receivers, trade down.
Yeah.
Trade down. Get extra assets. Get 2 2nd-round picks, maybe 1 early, and draft a receiver and a middle linebacker in round 2.
Yeah.
That to me is not a bad idea either, especially for a team that only has 6 draft picks in the entire draft. You want to add some draft capital? Do that. And I'm not sure if they've really done a lot of trading down. They've done a lot of trading up.
I don't think they have traded, not in the 1st round. They certainly haven't
maybe later,
down.
Maybe later in the draft at some point. James Cook, I guess they did that.
In the 2nd round, they traded down to get him. Yeah.
But like, I like that idea. If in draft Jack Campbell or Sanders early in the 2nd round, and just the one. And actually, if you need to trade back up in the 2nd round, now I've created extra draft capital for myself to move back up, or I can use that 3rd-round pick to move back up. Yeah. I got to see them draft a receiver in the first 2 rounds. And what I don't want to have happen is what happened last year. What happened last year, I think they probably wanted a receiver in round 2. And the run happened right before they were on the clock. And the Chiefs traded up to get Sky Moore. The Steelers got Pickens. The Patriots drafted Tyquan Thornton. There were like 6-7 receivers that went right in front of them. And by the time they were up, there was nobody worth the pick. I don't want to be the Bills to be in a situation where I'm looking at where they are in round 2 and going, oh, there's no one left. Just don't let that happen.
I agree with you about the trade down scenario unless if the Bills want to get an offensive tackle. From everything I've read and people I've talked to,
and there's
only a certain amount of first-round graded talent at offensive tackle, and you want somebody who's going to come in and start, no controversy. You're drafting a right tackle in the first round. He's starting. Anyway, at the end of the first round, you got the Bengals and the Chiefs who very likely are going to be looking at an offensive tackle in the draft too. So
the Bengals might not anymore, right? Because of Brown, or were they still?
They signed Brown, but now they're looking to trade Jonah Williams.
Jonah Williams.
And who knows, they might even cut Collins after
Collins
just
can't stay healthy.
He might be a cap cut. So the Bengals and the Chiefs are two teams that could definitely take a tackle. So if you want a tackle, you might be, flirting around with danger, trading down too much, if that's the position you're targeting. Otherwise, I completely agree with you. And on a team with a lot of cap issues coming up, they're kicking the can down the road with some of these guys they restructured. They're going to have to pony up. You got to start hitting on picks. You can't expect them to hit like the Chiefs did last year, where all these star guys are playing pivotal roles.
Yeah.
But you also can't draft, and the Bills have been notorious for this. You can't draft one starter and then a bunch of guys who are going to be brought along real slow.
Yeah.
These guys are going to have to contribute early on, I think, anyway.
Well, in the Chiefs, I'd have to look back at the exact amount of picks they had. Were the Chiefs really that much better at drafting, or they just have more picks? They had all that capital from trading Tyreek Hill away, that they had more lottery tickets.
I think the Bills had better depth, too. I mean, the Bills had better depth. Injuries and lack of depth, a lot of those guys were forced into to get on the field quicker than the Bills. One last thing here, too.
Yeah, go for it.
We could talk till we're blue in the face. We could talk until Sunday morning about the Bills and offense.
Yeah.
Let's not forget who the head coach is and what his identity is. It's defense. I want you to be right. I want to be right. I just have a difficult time thinking that the Bills are not going to say, we need to fix this middle linebacker spot. We got 4 defensive tackles. None are under contract next year. Let's go get one early if he's there. That's what concerns me.
That is probably right, and their draft history would tell you that is right. They have not spent a first-round pick on offense other than Allen, right? That's still right, isn't it? They've not spent a first-round pick on going back to 2017.
Correct.
So you're probably right. The coach wants to solidify his defense. I will give the coach some credit, though, and this is why I'm open to it. He has called receiver the Bills' fastball multiple times throughout his tenure here. And I will say that even though a lot of their draft capital goes to defense, this coach really he has overseen one of the pass happiest, one of the most offensive football teams in the league for the last 5 years. And maybe that's just because they hit on the quarterback. That's why I'd be open to it, though. I think you're probably right, but I would be open to the coach going, all right, receiver really is our fastball. All right, let's do it. I can figure out something, Bernard or Dodson, or I can figure out middle linebacker. Shouldn't that be the attitude he takes, by the way?
Yeah.
If you're such a good defensive coach on some level, I'd like to think you don't need a perfect middle linebacker. That he's got Milano next to him. He's got Von Miller in front of him. He's got Poyer and Hyde behind him. He's got he'd be insulated, whoever that middle linebacker would be. What would he look like? How bad would the Bills defense get if they went with Dodson and Bernard?
I agree with you. That said, I would bet pennies to the dollar that I don't think Dodson or Bernard are going to be the week 1 starter at
probably right
middle linebacker. We'll see. I just got 2 quick Sabres questions for you. I'm sure you're going to talk a lot about it on the air on Friday. I wanted to say tomorrow, but again, people are listening to this on Friday. You'll be talking about on the air, Locked On Sabres podcast. Devin Levi, tonight, notwithstanding Thursday night, and again, we're only loosely watching since 8 o'clock because we've been taping this show here. But tonight aside, whatever, we saw the first 2 goals and whatever. It is what it is. He's still a great prospect. He's looked really, really good his first 2 starts. This is his first time he's playing consecutive games in the NHL. So let's throw this game right out the window. No matter how it ends up turning out, not important for the purpose of what I'm going to ask you here. It's becoming obvious next year that Devin Levi is probably going right to Buffalo. Probably not in Rochester. Right. If you care about your fans and marketing and PR, Devin Levi starting the season in Buffalo. I don't see a scenario where he doesn't. I guess my question for you is, A, do you agree with that? And B, let's say that is the case. Who's the odd man out? Obviously, Craig Anderson's gone after this year, but UPL or Eric Comrie, who's the odd guy out? Who goes to Rochester? Who gets dealt or traded or waived? How does this play out in your mind?
Can I answer both?
Yeah.
I might want to answer both. I think if Levi takes the net for next year, and everything's pointing to right now, I think that's going to happen. Even you mentioned we're loosely watching the game. Like the goal that just went in on him, it's a wrist shot that goes off Owen Power and into the net, who Power's standing off to the side behind Levi.
Right.
I think Levi is tracking towards starting the year in Buffalo. And if that happens, they've got decisions to make. Comrie, to me, I don't, not to be mean to him, I don't ever need to see him in a Sabre uniform again.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, Comrie's an easy wave. You couldn't trust him all year. And the way the cap works, you'd save like 1.05 of his 1.25 or whatever. Like you'd save almost all of his cap hit by sending him down, and they shouldn't care anyway because they're $25 million under the cap.
Right.
So Comrie, find a place for him to play. The way you did with Matt Molson once upon a time, you just sent him to Hershey, right, or Ontario, wherever they sent him. AHL. If someone in the NHL wants to claim him, I would waive him. Comrie can't be one of their two goaltenders next year. And Luukkonen, I'm more open to that. I might even want to predict that's where they end up, is that they will go Levi and Luukkonen, but I can't get there. Luukkonen, at 23 years old, what has he really shown? Where is the proof that he's an NHL goaltender? Other than circumstance, and other than they needed goalies this year.
Right.
Like they didn't have anybody. Anderson couldn't start that much, and Comrie was not good, and he got injured. So they just needed Luukkonen to be in the NHL. Because since the day he was drafted, and we've known he was a second-round pick and 6'5" in raw, the day he was drafted.
Yeah.
Since then, he got an 893 save percentage in the AHL and an 896 save percentage in the NHL. So I've got a guy that has not performed in the AHL, has not performed in the NHL. Yes, he's got the tools. Yes, he's got the raw ability, but he needs more time to grow in the AHL. I compared him to Ullmark the other day. Ullmark, remember, who's now going to win the Vezina, he showed up for the Sabres right away when Robin Leonard got hurt, and then he went away for 2 years. And he played entirely in Rochester, and he didn't make the NHL as a regular until he was 25. That would be 2 years from now if you're Luukkonen. But the problem is, because he's played so much, the start of next year, he needs waivers. So what do you do? I don't think Rochester, unless I'm missing something on the cap, I don't think he can go to Rochester. So I got to make a decision. He's either one of your two goaltenders, or you've got to trade him. And who's the right partner for Devin Levi? Two unproven netminders, two young guys like that? I would feel a lot more secure if the Sabres flipped their goalie value from a 23-year-old with still potential in Luukkonen and try to find a team that maybe is rebuilding or is starting over a little bit in goal, and see if I can find a goalie between the age of like 27 and 33 and more secure, more solid. I think a veteran, proven goaltender, doesn't have to be great, would be the right partner for Levi, kind of actually like what Boston did with Ullmark. Jeremy Swayman, who is a great young goalie for the Bruins, he was coming on strong right before they signed Ullmark. Same thing as Levi. He played 10 games in the NHL, great save percentage, great record. And they said, okay, he's got to be one of our two. Who do we pair with him? They had another good prospect that they traded, and then they signed Ullmark. And I don't need the Sabres to pay $5 million over 5 years for a new Linus Ullmark, but that type of guy, who was Ullmark at the time? He was an above-average starting goalie with injury problems.
Yeah.
You're not going to find the perfect guy. I've mentioned Thatcher Demko. I had a caller today bring up Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't think he'd come here, but he's had a good year in Minnesota, so I'd be into that on a 1 or 2 year deal. That's where I'd end up. I'd end up with Levi's going to be one of your two goalies. I got to have something more rock solid in case there's turbulence, which always happens for young goaltenders. And if the turbulence happens, I need a better plan B than Eric Comrie and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
I'm disappointed in Eric Comrie. We had a lot of hopes for him coming from Winnipeg. He looked really good in a limited backup role last year. It just didn't really materialize, and I'm not sure that it ever will in Buffalo, and especially with Devin Levi clearly in the picture. One last thing, too. I noticed this on your Twitter today, and then also Matt Beauvais from Channel 7 as well. You guys were going through some line projections, potential, early, and it's way too early for that, but it's always fun to do anyway.
It was for my own mental sanity.
Your own mental sanity. That's what you said. But I noticed both of you had Matthew Savoy among your Sabres 12 forwards. So you think there's a reasonably good chance
I do
that he can end up starting the season next year in Buffalo, because he can't go to Rochester.
Right.
So it's either going to be in Buffalo or he's going to be back in the Canadian Hockey League, the CHL. A player needs to be 20 years old by season's end, which he's not, or 4 seasons accrued to be able to play in the HL. So
I got to check. Got to check what he's doing right now, or what his point total is up to. He's at 9 points in 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 points in the WHL playoffs in 4 games so far. So juniors, he's crushing it right now. Every night I'm seeing highlights from somewhere out in Manitoba or Alberta that he's making guys look silly. I don't know how confident I feel in it. I feel like it's possible. He was a top 10 pick. I always like the Danny Briere comp for him. You rarely see guys that small with a shot that lethal. And he has great hands too, and great awareness and great speed. But the shot, guys that are 5'10", 5'9", and have shot like that, like he really reminds me of Briere. I know it's a lofty bar to set for him, but he was a top 10 pick, so maybe it's not that unfair. Him being in the NHL next year comes down to one thing: do either Zemgus Girgensons or Kyle Okposo come back? There's a goal, by the way. As you can tell, that didn't even need to announce.
What a wild game we're watching here at Imperial.
But Savoy, man, the lineup I had the other day on Twitter, I had Savoy and Yuri Kulich on the third line with Casey Middlestad. And then I had Jordan Greenway with Tyson Jost and Peyton Krebs on line 4. It's like a defensive checking line. Krebs has really done good defensively, so I trust it. That team that I put on paper on Twitter, this is the youngest team in hockey this year.
Yeah.
That team I put on paper is even younger.
Wow. Yeah.
Because think you'd be trading out Girgensons and Okposo for Savoy and Kulich. They're all 19. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. The thing is, though, those guys are going to show up at some point. So they got to go somewhere. I mean, I didn't even have Olofsson on that team. I was just assuming he would get traded, and that's not, it could happen. I would not assume it. What happens if Savoy's ready? That's my question is, if Savoy's ready, is there room for him? Because they've done a good job of not blocking development thus far, but there are so many forwards now on this team. And I don't know where I'm at, because I think if it's even close, they might say, we'll give him another year to cook in the WHL, and we'll bring him up next year. I think he would really have to blow their doors off to make the team next year. But the reason I put him on that team is because if you see what he's doing in juniors right now and where the reason why he was drafted, he is capable of blowing their doors off.
You're pretty confident Kulich will be a Buffalo Sabre next year.
I think so. He's been so good in the AHL. He's an all-around player. You can put him on a bottom, unlike Savoy even. Well, I guess I did have Savoy on a bottom 6 line. But Kulich more so because he's a little bit more defensively responsible, it appears. And I think he's done some penalty killing in Rochester and whatnot. I think he's someone that you can have play 12 to 15 minutes a night, bottom 6, maybe give him some penalty kill minutes, and be in the NHL as he grows his offensive game. He's just been – I almost feel like he's been too good in Rochester. Yeah. His development is off the charts right now for his age at the AHL level. So he seems ready to me already. So I think so. I think I would bet yes and feel decently confident about it with Kulich versus.
And the Sabres score again. This is turning Cousins with his second of the night. What a wild podcast
31.
This is turning into.
Yeah. Versus, just to finish the point, versus Savoy, where I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful that he could. I would love to see him. I'm as excited about him as any Sabre prospect right now. It's just a little bit trickier with him because of, as you mentioned, the AHL. He came with the AHL situation. So he may just end up back in juniors. I don't know.
And for people who might be wondering, well, the Sabres are just going to get rid of Okposo and Girgensons as well. They can, because they're unrestricted free agents.
And they might not have a choice.
They just don't re-sign them.
They might not have a choice. I mean, I might want to think they bring one of them back. And that might come down to Girgensons. Girgensons, I think he's a good fourth-line player. I like him. I think he's become a fan favorite again after maybe a couple years of being forgotten about. I wouldn't blame the guy, though. If he's like every Sabre fan. He's gone through all this drought with us.
Yeah.
I wouldn't blame the guy if, Tampa called him and said, hey, you want a 3-year deal, $2 million per? He might just say, listen, I gave you 10 years. I would like to go try to win a cup or go try to make the playoffs. And
right.
I wouldn't blame him for doing that, but maybe not. The Sabres are getting close too, and they're showing guys like that, hey, we're getting close. So maybe he comes back. I might want to predict, though, that both aren't back, that it would be one or the other. If Girgensons re-signs, maybe Okposo retires. And if Girgensons doesn't re-sign, maybe they call Okposo and say, hey, you want to do 1 year, $1 million, come back as captain?
2 quick side notes here as we wrap up. This game right now, as we're wrapping up this live stream and this podcast, it's 6-4 Buffalo.
6-4. I bet the under, people.
This is an exciting game because they've given up 4 goals. Levi, from what I haven't been able to lock in because we're doing this show, but regardless if they were good goals, fluky goals, they're playing well around him. They're putting up offense on the road against a team that's like, they feel like they got something to play for. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is just we tend to overreact sometimes when a player comes here and he doesn't do something early on. Like Greenway was getting dragged on Twitter. I might have.
I did it a little bit.
Yeah, I was just saying I might have did a little bit of myself as well. Yeah. He just got 3 goals in the last handful of games. So, he's giving them good production, and that's pretty much what you should be able to expect from him. So let's just chill sometimes on the quick knee-jerk reactions. And that's coming from somebody who, other than Nate Gary, is probably the biggest knee-jerk reactor in the world. I'm talking about myself.
Does that apply to Devin Levi also? Because we all kind of just did that with him for 2 games, didn't we?
Yeah, we anointed him.
I feel okay with that, even still.
Right.
I mean,
sure.
Part of that, though, is Levi. I mean, Greenway was struggling before he got here. Levi just came off the greatest college hockey career like we've ever seen from a goalie. Mm-hmm. So I guess the hype before they got here, should play into that too a little bit.
Yeah. All right, we're going to end with 2 questions here.
Sure.
Non-sports questions. Number 1, I want you to give me an unpopular Buffalo opinion. Like an opinion that most Buffalo people might not find popular. Like, I'll give you an example.
I got one for you.
Mine is, I hate blue cheese. I think blue cheese sucks. And I know people in Buffalo, that's like sacrilegious to say. That's just my take.
But you don't like ranch either?
I don't like ranch either. Yeah, so I don't like either.
That's not, it's not as bad as it could be.
Sure.
Of a take.
All right, what's yours?
It's not too far off, actually. I say this from Imperial Pizzeria. I do like it here. I'm not a big fan. I'll go stronger. I do not prefer Buffalo style pizza.
Oh, okay.
Deep crust, not even deep crust. Like thick.
What do you like?
Thick crust. I'm an extremist when it comes to pizza. I either like the really thin, like New York style crust, where I can fold it, or I like deep dish pizza,
like that Chicago style.
I don't know if you want to. Some people want to tell me that it's not even real pizza. Maybe you're right. It's delicious. I don't care if you call it pizza or not. I don't get Chicago deep dish pizza. It's hard to find maybe around here. I found a couple places that have it.
Yeah.
Not nearly the same as like authentic, but I love deep dish pizza and I like New York pizza. And Buffalo pizza, I eat it. Trust me, I eat it all the time. I'll eat it here. But if you were asking me how to make the perfect pizza, I think the dough on my pizza would be like a third of the size of what you get at most Buffalo pizzerias.
But that's a good take. That's fair. I like New York pizza. I'm not a big deep dish fan like you, but I do like the thin New York style pizza.
Is that hot takey enough?
That's very hot takey.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, last question here. So I asked you an unpopular Buffalo opinion. You've been here your whole life now, Western New York anyway. Yeah. What's your single favorite thing about Buffalo?
My favorite thing about Buffalo?
Living here. And
I mean, I like a lot
Buffalo,
of things.
I mean Western New York, but Buffalo.
Yeah. I mean, I love a lot of things about it. I never want to move. I never want to move from here. If I have it my way, I will never move from here.
You don't love Detroit scoring as we're so now it's 6-5.
6-5. I bet the under people.
They're going to double the under at this rate.
Unbelievable. Right. My favorite thing. I mean, it might change day to day. The other day, I might have told you it was I never run into traffic. I don't know. I think it's a tough question. I feel like I should have a good answer because I should have a list of things. Like we have. Like, I'm getting married coming up in June, and like our table setters are like they're buffaloes, and like our whatever you call it that you sign when you come in, like it's a giant wooden buffalo. Like we have buffalo decorations all over our house. I'm wearing a
It's
hat
pride,
right
then.
now with a buffalo on it.
It's your pride. You have pride in this city.
Yeah, I do. I mean, other than just like I'm from here, like I like someone that has now experienced more and more like big cities. Like I didn't travel a ton as a kid. So now that I've been to more and more big cities, I like that Buffalo is a decent sized city with a small town vibe to it.
Yeah.
I like that I'm able to get around easily. I'm able to walk almost everywhere. The beer scene is incredible. Like breweries all across. Like there's a lot of great places to hang out and go out with friends. The food scene is incredible. And as you know, the development on the waterfront continues to get better and better. I like spending time in the city, and a lot of East Aurora. Like I'm not really answering the question, I guess, but
No, you are.
I like
pride of being here.
Yeah,
man.
I like that it is a big enough city that I can go anywhere. I could go to East Aurora and be there in 20 minutes.
Sure.
I could. There really, maybe I'm getting to it's just is drivability. I can experience the whole area without having to travel, taking 2 hours to get there.
And let me tell you, buddy, as somebody who lived for 5 years recently in Florida, that's something you should not take for granted because, God, all it takes is one car accident in Florida and you're stuck somewhere for 2-3 hours. I'm along the same lines with you, man. To me, it's, well, two things. Number one, football's religion here, and I love that. Again,
I should have answered the sports scene.
Yeah.
I love the sports scene, of
waking
course.
up on a Sunday and going to Wegmans or Target or wherever it's going to be that weekend, it's a sea of Bills gear. It's awesome. And coming from Florida again for the last 5 years, it's just nobody seems to care. And then the other thing is just community, man. People rally around each other in these communities so well. I'll end this by talking about quickly here Imperial Pizza. I had a friend who has stage 4 cancer, and he's from South Buffalo. He lived in Florida. He came back we threw a benefit for him. And this place, it gave us like 15 party pies for nothing, for free.
Wow.
No questions asked because they donated, and people from all South Buffalo, not even South Buffalo, just all over show up. Yeah. When somebody goes down, people pick you up here. You know what I'm saying? There's not, it's not a perfect city. There's a lot of shitty stuff about Buffalo, just like anywhere else. But this is a town where everybody picks you up, man. And it's a community. It's a legit, true community. There's neighborhoods, and you can't say that in a lot of other places.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it because you feel that. You feel that. I mean, you feel that on Bills game days, even. Like that's. I think that's really why I became such the biggest sports fan that I became, and why I'm so ingrained in the Bills and Sabres is you feel like you're a part of something.
Yeah.
And I listen to the Dan Le Batard show a lot. They're a Miami-based podcast, and I love that show more than anything. But they just from listening to them over the years, you do not get the same thing in cities like that.
Yeah.
Like it's not the same. They were talking about recently on that show how Miami was just in the Final Four, and after they advanced to the Final Four, they like went out like to celebrate with each other, and just you would never have known.
Yeah.
You would have never known just going about Miami. You would have never known that their college basketball team just made the Final Four.
Yeah.
And if the Sabres made the playoffs or the Bills made the playoffs or the Super Bowl or won a playoff game and you went out after, you would know it. If you didn't watch the game and weren't a sports fan, you would know it.
Yeah.
And that's it. You think that's something that happens everywhere, but I really don't. The sense I get is it's not everywhere.
I couldn't agree more. And again, living in Florida, I saw all that firsthand. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it. That's going to do it here live from Imperial Pizza. Again, 1035 Aber Road. Awesome wings. Good menu, amazing, man. Not even just the wings. The wings probably aren't even the strongest part of the menu here. But anyway, make sure you follow, I'm going to say it, my cousin on Twitter at Sneaky Joe Sports. Get your lazy ass up in the morning. Listen to him and Jeremy, or if not, then you can get up, listen to him and Sal at 10 o'clock. Or, of course, check out Locked On Sabres podcast. My man, Joe, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, too.
All right, guys, that's going to do it. I will be back with new shows next week. Take care.